Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the February edition of the Product Ops HQ Meetup. For those who don't know me yet, I'm Anna, and I'm tuning in from Portugal. I'm glad to be your host today, along with my friend Alisa, who's going to be my co-host. Welcome, Alisa. So thank you all. Thank you. So thank you all for joining us today. If you are here with us, please drop us a quick "I" in the chat and let us know where you are tuning in from. So I will wait a bit. In the meantime, I want to share with you a couple of housekeeping notes. So this live session is around 1 hour long, and it will be recorded and available on demand later. We will start with a presentation, but we want it to be as much engaging as possible. So if you have a question for our speaker, you can drop it in the chat and I will ask her to answer. After the presentation, we will have enough time to do a live Q&A. So during the live Q&A, I will ask you to turn on your mic and camera so you can ask directly the questions to our guest speaker. So without further ado, we are here today to discover the roadmap to success in your first 90 days as a new product ops role, as a new product ops professional. We will start soon, but before introducing our lovely speaker, let's kick things off with a quick icebreaker. So what's one word you'd use to describe your first 90 days in a new product ops role? Or if you are just starting, let us know which word you hope it defines it. Drop your answer in the chat. And if someone wants to tell out loud, feel free to tell us. Okay, I'll wait. Firehouse and clear. Listening tour, that's great. Chaos, yeah. Chaotic, intense. Wow, that's so awesome, guys. Thanks for sharing. And I believe we have so much here to discuss with our speaker. So without further ado, I want to introduce our amazing speaker, Maria van Wambicki. Maria has over 20 years of experience leading product management, product operations, and program management teams for both private and public companies. Our power skills are scaling operations and cross-functional teams using agile methodologies, driving alignment and efficiencies across teams to ensure delivery of the best products for their customers, and deep engaging communication and facilitation that gets to the core of issues, and introducing solutions that create sustainable change for organizations and teams. Maria is also an avid outdoors woman who loves to unplug while solo backpacking throughout the world. Who doesn't, right? So welcome, Maria. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your helpful advice with our community. All right, so we will start right after a short word from our sponsor, Dragonboat. So Dragonboat helps teams deliver products that accelerate business outcomes. It's award-winning responsive product portfolio management platform adopted by more than 4,000 teams in over 60 countries, allows teams to strategize, prioritize, plan, deliver, measure, and improve their products. To learn more about the suite of products for road mapping, portfolio management, and strategic planning that Dragonboat has to offer, check out dragonboat.io/productops, and my brilliant co-host will drop the link in the chat for you. Are you able to see my deck now? Yeah?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. So Maria, let's go to it. Passing the mic over to you now.
Thanks, Anna. All right, team. I'm really excited to be here as a member of the growing product ops community. And I wanted to just shout out special thanks to Dragonboat for providing a space for us to collaborate, share ideas, and support one another as we navigate this product ops journey. And from some of the responses in the chat, it's a tumultuous journey, but we're on it together. So know that much of the content that I've put together in the presentation is based on a poll that we ran, which is asking, some of the things that you came across in your first 90 days on the job. So we've built much of the content around answering some of those pain points. So thank you all for being a part of this presentation. It's really a true testament of the power of our community. Next slide, please. So before we dive into tactical content, I like to set the stage for a general kind of fits most definition of what product ops is. So we put it in context. And as you look at the slide, you're thinking, wow, that's a really robust charter, right? And that's the intent, again, based on the comments in the chat. We are asked to do so much, often as a one-person shop, and that makes creating effective, repeatable processes that make an impact even more crucial. So let's quickly describe each area. Product ops is the glue between functions and teams, ensuring that cross-functional communication and alignment are proactively built into processes. Product ops is aligning product priorities to what matters most to the organization, with global prioritization across multiple teams and roadmaps. OKRs, KPIs, and value streams are some of the methodologies that I've used to enable this. Product ops is streamlining routine tasks for product managers through ownership and management of the product data strategy, tech stack, frameworks, templates, again, just to name a few. This result is often giving back time to PMs so they can focus on creating customer value. And this, in my experience, has been one of the delights of product ops, is having a PM come to me and say, wow, you made my life easier, or you freed me up to work on more requirements, right? So this is a very, very key function. Product ops is product manager optimization and excellence through onboarding, empowerment, and coaching so that PMs can be their most effective in their roles. Product ops is creating value for the organization through continuous process improvements and standard operating procedures that scale. Number 6, product ops is promoting a discipline of continuous discovery and learning. This includes user, customer, and competitive research, as well as testing and experimentation, again, built into the day in the life of a product manager. Product ops is celebrating and communicating with the development and execution of a communication strategy that has documentation and presentation, and this is all collaborated and executed through a product ops calendar. And finally, if that wasn't enough, product ops is ownership of the PM tech stack, including tool selection, implementation, and management. So the product ops charter varies greatly across organizations. Every role I've been in, it's different. So this is just the general, again, fits most definition before we dive into the actual tactical content. And I'm also really interested in hearing from some of you offline or in the chat about areas that you are responsible for that may have been missed in this rough cut definition. So now we've set up our contextual space so we can dive into the first 90 days of the product ops role and that framework. So I wanted to give you an aerial view just of this, again, the theme of the journey, navigating the product ops journey in your first 90 days. So congratulations. Amazing. You just landed a new role and you're very excited about diving in, but you don't know where to start. So the framework is actually broken down into 3 stages. Some stages may take longer than a month. Some stages may take less than a month. You might interchange actually when you execute on these things and when you act. So this is really a framework for you to take pieces from and to build your own, entry into an organization. So stage 1 is the curiosity stage. You're on a mission. Oh, previous slide, please. Stage 1 is the curiosity stage. You're on a mission and this is your learning tour. Before you start implementing any improvements, you need to identify how things are done at the present time, why they are done that way, and to begin discovering what's working and not working. This deep curiosity and active listening tour helps to make your intentions clear. And I think based on the poll results, a lot of the responses were about buy-in and cross-functional alignment and collaboration. So it's very key to build political capital early and have humility when you go into a new organization. And this is really a way to illustrate that that's your intent. The second stage is the inventory stage. Now that you have a big picture understanding of the organization, right, this aerial view, you're ready to dive into the details by inventorying and baselining work streams or roadmaps, processes, standard operating procedures, and data and information. Again, you want to gauge where improvements might be needed and also where they're needed most. And I like to say take utmost consideration should be placed on the product manager's day in the life, since really as a product ops leader, you are the product manager for the product managers. And again, freeing up time just brings delight. So stage 3 is the prioritization and quick win stage. And in this stage, you'll master the art of prioritization in the context of what matters most to the organization. And you'll identify a few quick wins that you can put into place, again, to go back to stage 1 and really show evidence of your intentions. So I hope that that's clear to set the stage for the 3 areas. All right, so deeply diving into the next slide, Anna, please. Stage 1, again, is the curiosity stage. You're on a learning tour and the organization is your map. You're going to navigate a new landscape by meeting with functional leads and stakeholders and each of the direct product team members. And generally, when I refer to the product team, I mean product management, design, and engineering, which is especially valuable in those teams working together in Agile, of course. And your aim in speaking to each of these individuals is to really understand the lay of the land. You're going to ask a ton of questions, be inquisitive, and take a passenger seat in the conversations. As I said previously, you don't have any political capital at this point, so you're building relationships that are going to mature into alliances as you progress through your role. You want to connect, right, and learn. You're an advocate for change, but you don't have all the answers yet, right? So the slow and graceful entry shows that you respect and honor that there's a reason behind why things are done a certain way, and you're on a mission to understand that why. And just a few tips here, as you're meeting one-on-one with individuals, functional leads, stakeholders, team members, take a ton of notes. I mean, copious notes. You're looking for any sort of identification of those areas that we're going to inventory in a later stage, right? So where are work streams being documented? What processes are in place? What tools are being used? You're likely going to revisit many of the conversations, again, in follow-up discussions and in other stages of the process. So you want to make sure you know where you might want to follow up. So listen intently. and empathetically, of course, to identify pain points and jobs to be done that can be improved. And again, make lists of work streams, processes, and data sets. Again, this is your own cheat sheet, so you can go back to it and refer in subsequent stages. So before I go on, are there any questions or clarifications needed? All right, coolio. Next slide, please. All right, so diving into stage 2, which is, around month 2, it's an inventory stage. You're approaching this stage, again, with a big picture or an aerial view of the organization, how things are done, and why they are done a certain way. In this stage, you're going to get in the weeds, and you're going to inventory everything and baseline as much as possible. So again, these are the work streams or the roadmaps, processes, standard operating procedures, data sets, and all the information you can find. And you really want to try to piece together a day in the life of a product manager and other members of that product team, right? Your role is to streamline and reduce friction in a day in the life of those roles. So you likely discovered key areas or pain points in your learning tour that you should highlight, again, with what matters most to the organization. I'm going to share just a few key areas that I've discovered. And again, I'm curious to see what others have identified in this early stages of a new role. So one is the full product portfolio. And this is a true holistic understanding of where resources are being utilized, so that in the near future, right, you can gauge the capacity of a specific team and then prioritize apples to apples. I've always been astounded that I discover that roadmaps aren't the only output where resources are being used, but there's tech debt and technical projects, and what we've, in a previous role, funny, called skunk works projects, right? Those things that you don't know that are being worked on behind the scenes. And it's imperative to understand they exist because, again, they're taking away velocity and capacity from a team and what they can work on for customer value. The second is how the team is aligning discovery and output to the company vision, strategy, and planning. What methodology is being used? I referred to this previously as like OKRs, KPIs, value streams. But again, we are here to make an impact. And unless the work we're doing aligns to a high-level strategy, then it is actually out of alignment with the company mission. The third thing that I've discovered is a data strategy for the team, right? And depending on the role, you might also include business metrics. I was also responsible for business operations in my previous role, so it was quite a robust data strategy. So you want to understand what data the team is using, what disparate data sets, and also is there a framework, like the Google Heart framework, right? So the fourth is the product manager toolset or product dev tech stack. And it's best to learn about these tools by shadowing the product manager to see not only what tools they're using, but how they're using them and how frequently, right? How much are they actually being leveraged? And it's surprising, again, to me, how often Excel is used as the go-to, or Google Sheets or Smart Sheets, when a more sophisticated solution like Dragonbow isn't being used. So fifth is frameworks and prioritization methodologies. How do PMs prioritize features, and are they all using the same set of frameworks? In my experience, I've seen a plethora of frameworks being used for prioritization. And again, this reduces the normalization of the output, right? And does not create standard operating procedures for a team. And finally, looking at recurring meetings and events. And this isn't always something that people think of, but it's the biggest drain on time for a product manager. And if we're going back to one of the goals in our role, it's giving time back to the product manager. So imagine if you could decrease the amount of meetings that they're spending their time in to work on excelling in the role and, again, providing value back to customers. So these are some key areas that I've encountered, but we'll go over a full inventory list on the next slide. I know that was already a lot, but in closing, as you're working to identify the who, what, why, and how for product teams, really start to build your own narrative or hypothesis about the day in the life of a product manager. And again, other members of the product team, right? You want to start to gain a deep level of empathy and understanding of the main pain points, which will then translate into the initiatives that you're going to work on later on. All right, thank you, Anna. And I know this is a very robust slide, and it's not meant for me to talk through. It's meant to be a resource. And the way this is laid out is a full inventory list of all those areas where, again, you're going to look at to really deeply understand a day in the life of a product manager and other members of teams. It's organized into 2 dimensions. The first dimension is the who, what, why, and how. And then it's categorically organized based on your product ops charter, which maps somewhat loosely to the slide of the massive charter we went through when we were adding context. So you'll see that there is a plethora of items here. And the reality is you may or may not be responsible for all of these areas, but I wanted to give you a robust list to at least cross-reference and say, oh, wow, did I think of that? Did I think of that? There might be some low-hanging fruit too. So again, just for reference, and you'll have this in the slide deck at the end of the presentation. And if there are any questions about any of this, again, drop it in the chat, or if we want to go back to it in Q&A, happy to do so. So next thing I wanted to show you.
Sorry, Maria.
Yeah.
We are actually having one question in the chat.
Yeah,
so C. Wedwell, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, asks if do you think product ops is responsible for defining reg definitions, t-shirt sizes, etc.?
So the reason that I bring this up is that a lot of roles in product operations include release management, capacity planning, because you're working in alliance with the engineering team or the engineering operations team. So the reason I bring this up is to ensure that you identify that there's a standardization and a standard methodology that's being used across teams in order to normalize data. So it may just be asking the engineering team, right? Asking engineering ops, what are you using for t-shirt sizing? And the reason this is fundamental is that if you have 2 teams that are working on different roadmaps, right, for the same organization or same business unit, but their methodology is being defined in a different way, the data is disparate and inconsistent, and what you have is that you're not able to size things across the entire portfolio effectively. So that really is the goal, is normalizing the way things are calculated across the entire portfolio so we can get to a point to compare apples to apples. I hope that answers.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, so you're welcome. So the next slide is just showing the implementation. Anna, next slide, pretty please. Thanks. All right, so this is an implementation of actually previous. I think it skipped one.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay, there you go. So this is a metrics inventory implementation that I put together. And there are a few things that I wanted to show. This, again, can be very rough cut done in Excel or any other spreadsheet. And this is one inventory example of how I would approach running inventory analysis for metrics. Or what are the metrics and data points that a PM leverages and accesses, again, a day in the life to make informed decisions. So you'll see the table headings are incredibly important because there's some things we're calling out. What is the source of the data? what is the entity, how it's calculated, how often it's calculated, and how reliable it is. Again, when we run these inventory, the key is what we want to get to is what will be the data point that we end up selecting to be used as the universal data set for a PM, right? So another thing I wanted to call out is you'll look at time on task, and I purposefully duplicated this because in my experience, as you talk to PMs and you're running inventory, you'll see that PMs will be using the exact same measurement, time on track, from 5 different sources. So that, again, does not normalize or create a reliable universal data set. So this is a prime example of why we want to run inventory. Not only what are people doing, what are people using, but where are there disparities in data and where might we throw a PM off track? So this is a good example of that. And again, you'll have this in the PowerPoint. And I also have, versions of these things in Excel if you guys want a quick template to start off. So next slide, please, Anna. Oh, what is a dupe? It's a duplicate. Sorry. Yeah, just a duplicate entry. So the previous slide had a duplicate reference or data point for time on task that I discovered in my analysis. Oh, no worries. No worries. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to call out dupe. It was not an acronym. Good call out, though. Okay, so I wanted to show you just an example of I've gone through all of my due diligence. I've identified the right universal data set for PMs to leverage, the sources, and I've removed all duplications or redundancies. And then I've implemented this into Dragonboat as a single source of truth for PMs to leverage. The reason I think it's imperative to institute metrics into kind of a universal, robust tool is that you're building a behavior for product managers to leverage data to make decisions. If data is all over the place and it's not easily accessed, it won't be leveraged. So that's why I love this single source of truth. All right, so next slide, pretty please. This is just a graphical view of data over time, and I think it's incredibly important to show longitudinal trends within a platform. And that's also, again, why instituting using a robust tool is even more valuable. All right, so now let's get back to stage 3, again, which is the final stage in our journey. And this is the prioritization and quick win stage. It's quite robust. So now that you have a high level and detailed understanding of the organization, you're ready to take action. In this stage, you will master the art and science of prioritization in the context, again, always of what matters most to the organization. And you'll also identify those quick wins that you can put in place to show evidence of your intentions and that you're a rock star product ops leader. This is the start of you walking the talk in your new role. And the improvements you implement that start to have a material impact, and even a small impact, right? That's the idea of a quick win. You're going to increase your political capital and earn the right to begin solving more complex challenges with the trust and support of your team behind you. So to kick off, you're going to leverage the mass amount of context you gathered during the previous 2 stages, and you're going to translate those findings into actionable initiatives that tie back to the who, what, why, and how themes and your product ops charter categories. That's why I built out that framework. And I know that's a lot. I just like to build an information architecture for you to keep yourself organized. So let me give you some examples of things I've encountered. Again, because this is very ambiguous. Like, how do I turn the data I gathered into an actionable initiative? Let's walk through how to do that. So for the how theme, under the standard operating procedure, processes, and templates category, I often hear of this pain point from the design team. Design team speaking, we are invited to participate in discussions only after design decisions have been made, And the proposed solution isn't always the best one or the easiest or the best to implement and doesn't necessarily provide the most value for customers. We really need to get involved sooner. So with this pain point, I heard from a design team member, I translated the learning into an initiative that would read something like this: review and refine lifecycle framework to ensure design team is involved during planning stages. Sounds super boring, but again, what we're doing is we're translating what we learned into actionable initiatives that you will end up adding to your product ops backlog and prioritizing, and this becomes naturally your charter. So here's a couple more. So for the what theme under the full product portfolio category, I've witnessed unplanned projects interrupt planned roadmap initiatives and throw planned work off course. With this pain point, the learning translated into an initiative would be: design a process to assess impact of unplanned work on planned work so that informed decisions and trade-offs can be made, or something along these lines. Yeah, I know these are seriously the high pain points that I've experienced in every role. So third and final one, an example is how theme under the PM tech or tool stack. And this is one I brought up earlier, actually. And during my own experience in inventory stages and speaking to PMs, like I said, there's so many disparate tools being used. And I think probably the most destructive is the use of different things for backlogs. And some product managers I've seen using backlogs with Excel, Google Sheets. And what you do is you lose sight of being able to track backlog initiatives, especially customer asks, and they get lost, right? They get lost in someone's personal drive. So the best thing is to select a universal tool, right? Like Dragon Boat or Jira, where all of these things will be tracked and product managers will manage their backlog. So again, this pain point translated into an initiative would be: select and implement a universal tool for PMs to manage their product backlogs. Pretty simple stuff, but you will be going through this exercise perhaps 100 times, right? Just depends on the amount of items that you've identified during your very intensive inventory stage. All right, so coming to a close here. So once this translation exercise is done, you have this product op backlog, right? It can be in any listicle format that you would want. So you next need to dive into prioritizing using a portfolio prioritization framework that you're going to design. And then when this framework is applied to the initiatives, you're going to gain insight into things you should work on first. Because again, we want to fit things into this quick wins category. So these are things that have the highest impact with the least amount of effort. So you're probably wondering, well, that's great, Maria, but how do I know what to work on first? How do I get to that point? And we're going to go over that in slide 15. But first, any questions or call outs? I know it's a lot of detail. All right, wonderful. So now that you've identified a healthy number of initiatives for your product ops backlog, it's time to develop your own weighted prioritization framework. Again, tying always back to what matters most to the organization. You should have gained some deep insight into these areas during your learning tour and also in studying vision and strategy documentation, whatever you could get your hands on, right? And if you're hesitant or lack confidence in deciding on these variables, or you want just really reinforcement that your selection is accurate, you can re-engage your roster. This is the list of people that you spoke to in stages 1 and 2. This is also a great way to re-engage this group, to continue to build that political capital and to begin building your alliance in cross-functional team. So now to dive into how you're going to build the framework. It's broken into 2 key measurement areas, and they align with the action priority matrix. The action priority matrix, that's just a fancy name for that quick wins chart that was on the previous slide. So what we want to do is generate an aggregate score for impact, which is on the left, and then one for effort, which is on the right. And again, this ties back to that action priority matrix. High impact, low effort equals quick win. This is what we want to identify, and this is what we want to work on first. So to design the framework, you should have a pretty strong understanding of what matters most to the organization. Areas that I've measured in the past are customer, and again, these are all based on impact, customer impact, financial impact, competitive, strategic alignment, market, and again, market usually applies to first mover, second mover, speed to market, time to market, if that's if there's expediency that's tied to it or needed, and then also competitive. So under effort, the simplest measurement is time, right? So this would be resource, capacity, velocity, but I also like to add complexity, and this addresses technical feasibility. Technical feasibility is your engineering team, if you need assistance from them, is there friction in them developing something for your needs? Is it a technology that's used before? Is it a tool that's already in use? What is the learning curve? Those all apply to, again, the complexity. So once your impact and effort variables are identified, you're going to determine a scale. I use a 10-point scale for more granularity, but you can also use a 5-point scale with 10 and 5 having the most impact. So now you've got these things laid out, you're going to create a spreadsheet. Or use whatever method you want to build this out. You're going to add these variables as column headers across the top, and Smartsheet, Google Sheets, Excel, they all work. And then you're going to add each of your initiatives to the sheet and begin assigning scores. So just to dive into a little bit of detail so this is clear. So you build a spreadsheet with each of these variables as your column headers. And then you're going to have the first column, of course, for the initiatives that you created in step 2. So I have an example spreadsheet with all of these details that we can show in a couple of slides, and just to demystify this. So before we do that, slide 16, please. We want to assess, and again, this goes back to one of the questions about t-shirt sizing. This is t-shirt sizing for us in product ops and not necessarily for the engineering team. But in order for us to assess the time component, again, for our effort that's going to feed into this template, I like to use t-shirt sizing since it's simple and easy to understand. But it's really important that you define methodology for sizing before diving in. You want to always normalize your output. So first you need to decide on the sizes you'll use. If you have a lot of initiatives, it's better to be more granular. Next, you'll decide on what each size represents in terms of time. Does a numeric value equal a calendar week or a sprint or a release? You'll have to define that. And then since it's the product ops backlog, I suggest that you are the person that sizes initiatives. And then if you want to phone a friend, you can always talk to somebody that's on your roster to help define things if you aren't sure how to size. So now that you've understood and built your methodology for sizing, you're going to assign the weights for effort and add them for each of your initiatives to your sheet. Effort is made up of time from the t-shirt sizing value and then complexity, which again is it's subjective, but it's that assessment of technical feasibility. If you find that that is difficult to obtain, you can simplify your t-shirt sizing, or simplify and just use t-shirt sizing and reduce your matrix for effort equals time. And if you need me to clarify that, let me know. But just to reiterate, you can always simplify and omit trying to gather a score for complexity. So let's go to the next slide and see how we've pulled all of this stuff together. All right, so you can see this is pretty small, but this is a spreadsheet that I put together, and I've added the weight for all of the variables into the framework, and I have added the initiatives. I have across the top, you can see each of my column headers are directly tying back to the framework. I have a 10-point score that I used for all variables except for time, which equals the t-shirt sizing. And you'll see the end result is I have a total score for impact. And again, what we're trying to identify is highest impact, lowest effort equals quick win. And you can see that we've actually been able to chart that on the X and Y axis, right, with impact and effort to identify the quick wins. So unfortunately, Google Sheets isn't able to build out this sort of charting, but Excel is, and it's just a quick and easy way to pull together and see a visual. If not, you can sort and do a visual by impact and effort to identify. But this is actually a sheet that I'm happy to share with you that I have in Google Sheets. So now that we've added the weight for all the variables, you can see that you've got your quick wins. And again, the goal is that you want to make an impact as expeditiously as possible to show your value. You can always iterate once your MVP is out. Next slide, thanks. So I wanted, again, this is, doing a lot of quick work in Excel or Google Sheets, but on the next slide, I wanted to show you an example of the framework in Dragon Boat. I think we lost the prezzo, Anna.
Sorry.
No worries.
Just put this again. Okay.
Next slide, thank you. All right, so here's an example of the framework in action, and I implemented it in Dragon Boat, again, to create that single source of truth, which is essential for building standard operating procedures for a day in the life of PM. This really helps to encourage adoption, right? Having that ease of use and low friction. So finally, I know this is a lot of content. Next slide, please, Anna. I wanted to put myself back in your shoes and answer the poll myself about, what I wish I had known, being a bit retrospective. And two things come to mind. And the first is to take the time and energy to build political capital before implementing changes. And I think I've given some good guidance on how to approach that. But what I've witnessed in my own career is that the level of collaboration and buy-in has a direct correlation to the success of rolling out a new process. Change is really hard, and change is even harder without others being invested in its success. So stage one of the first 90 days is really about gaining that success and a graceful approach into introducing change so that you bring people along on your journey. The second is processes do not need to be heavy and account for every use case. It's better to roll out incremental changes and practice continuous improvement and adapt processes and systems to the people that actually use them most. I am a very operational thinker, so I tend to, if I over-engineer a process and try to roll it out, I found that that really reduces the adoption. So this was a learning insight for me throughout my career. So you can use experiential metrics and user data to make incremental improvements that are actually based on user behavior instead of our assumptions about how things should work. So now, in my day in the life, in my role, I remind myself to always view change through the lens of making a day in the life better, again, for the product team or one of the auxiliary team members. And I really can rarely go astray. So I know a lot of meat, a lot of content. I hope that it was clear in being described. If anything was unclear, let's go ahead, kick off some Q&A and dive into the nitty gritty. I'm super excited to hear from all of you.
Sure, thank you, Maria. This is really helpful and insightful, and we really have some questions to answer. But before we dive in the Q&A, I just want to share some helpful resources from our sponsor. So you don't worry that Alyssa is going to share those links in the chat for you. So we have the Product Ops Playbook. If you have not your copy yet, you should definitely download it and get certified in responsive PPM framework. And last but not least, you can sign up for the upcoming webinar around how to choose the right road mapping tool for your product team. All right, so let's go to the audience Q&A, and I will stop sharing so we can have more engagement. So let's see through the chat. What do we have here? Okay, so we have one question from Siv. Are you online? Do you want to put your mic on and ask your question directly?
Sure. Hi. Yeah. Hi. I'm 5. It rhymes with 5. And yeah, I guess my question, as you were speaking about, ideally we want to get into a consistent and kind of normalized backlog grooming, and totally agree with that. I think what I'm encountering is a lot of organizations have grown so big, so fast, and then they bring in product ops as an afterthought. And there's quite a bit of resistance. And so I'm just wondering if you or folks on the call here have techniques or approaches that they've been able to kind of successfully get over that hump without just kind of a hard mandate from the top down.
So just to clarify, the resistance is to product ops in general, or the specific task and ritual of backlog grooming?
In this particular example, just, backlog grooming. No, backlog grooming and I do it my way, I'm good. I do it my way, I'm good, and those two ways are different.
Yeah. So in my experience, it's worked very well to try to demystify what I think you're describing as almost this hybrid environment of almost adoption of Agile. Agile isn't a hybrid methodology. It's actually this very strict yet nimble and methodology. And unless all of the rituals are followed, it's actually not being done correctly, right? And
Sorry, it's not. No. I do backlog grooming this way. I do backlog grooming this way, this tool, that tool, this sheet, that Excel, that kind of thing. And kind of getting over that hump of I've got, 15 product managers, and ideally we need to get to some consistency.
Yeah. So from my perspective, it's been about empathy, right? So gaining a true understanding of why individuals are using disparate tools. And again, you really want to understand their jobs to be done. Is there a specific reason that a PM is using one tool? Maybe they engage more closely with the CS team, and that's a CS team tool that they have access to. You want to really deeply dive into the why and the reasons before you try to promote some universal tool set. So I think that helps. And then again, the normalization across the board doesn't need to be top down. It is about gaining efficiency and again, a universal tool set for PMs to use. And I've always viewed that as a value or a benefit. but you can't introduce something without, again, that deep understanding of the why. And there's usually a reason behind it. So that has always been my approach. And then in terms of just using a standardization, it should also be something that all teams use. So I've worked really closely with directors of engineering, or again, engineering ops, and collaborated on, building out the agile muscle, right? And if all the teams are doing something different, there's no normalization. There's no understanding of velocity. It's like all of this beautiful insight that you would gather is being missed, right? So 2 things: empathy, true deep understanding, and then the other is showing always your value to these end user groups. Why would I adopt something universal? Show me the value. It's the why do I care situation, right? You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. So next one, I think it's from Vladislav. Vladislav, are you here? Do
Yes.
you want to?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
So my first question is pretty simple, I think. So when you talked about this prioritization framework, right, when you need to score, score like the impact, right, and the effort. So the question is, do you prioritize? Do you put those scores individually as product ops manager, or do you kind of have, or is it like a collective effort, right? So when different people, they put scores and then you just average those scores. So basically that's the first question I have.
Okay, so super good question. And it like made me remember I forgot to say something. So to answer the first question is, what I did was I introduced a framework, right? There's a prioritization framework that you are building for yourself as the product ops guru. You're going to leverage that to prioritize your own backlog. Like so much of what we do in product ops is acting as a product manager, right, for the team. So if that's the case, you can definitely score your own initiatives. But one thing that is really valuable is you can take that. So again, that would be your input. You own it. But if you need to, again, I said phone a friend, ask for some feedback and collaborate a little on the metrics, that's fine. But that is your backlog. What you could also do is you can leverage that same framework that you've built and you can iterate on it, right? Once you try it out and you realize that the methodology is actually sound, you can apply that framework to your actual product portfolio and begin using it to weight things and prioritize things. In that case, you would, of course, want to bring others in because there's, technical impact, design impact. You generally would size things among your cohort or among that team. So that's a really good question. And also thank you for reminding me to call out that you can leverage these frameworks that you've built for your teams, not just for yourself.
Thank you.
Did you have one?
I have another one, but yeah, if I may. So the second question I have is, so kind of your opinion or your proposal, how to navigate or how to address a situation when the leadership, right, your direct manager, they imply you to do certain things, so certain changes or certain processes, to build certain processes the way they see it. But on the other hand, you have the feedback and pain points from product managers, right? You survey it, you talk to, and they have different pain points and they have different needs, right? So basically, how do you, and often, right, those things, they conflict.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you basically navigate between those or in this situation?
I love this. It reminds me of a behavioral question, like for interviewing, how do you deal with conflict in your organization? So I use data and again, proving value, but I ask permission like through some like diplomacy, right? And let me give you an example. So I, say my boss says you're going to use software development lifecycle. They already use it hands down. And you say, well, actually, I have a much better experience using Agile, right? And so you ask your boss or you ask whomever you're reporting to, wherever this conflict is, can I get 30 minutes of your time to show you the value, right, of what this solution will provide? And you can either do it in an email, whatever the medium is that this individual, again, you want to respect their time. But you ask permission. You can give them a presentation, show them the value, prove the value. Another way that I've approached this is pilot programs, which have been really impactful. Again, asking for permission and saying, look, I don't want to overhaul everything until I'm able to show you the evidence of what I'm suggesting. Can I take teams A and B and run Agile with them and run a pilot, surface the findings, and give you enough data to make, again, an informed decision? You can't fault leadership for pushing back if you're not showing evidence of a better future. So your job is to show that evidence so there's a comfort and a calculated risk and a data-informed decision that they can make. So those are approaches that I have used.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Really helpful.
All right, so I think we are almost on time. Maybe we will put the other questions in our Slack, and probably you can answer them there, Maria. That's okay for you?
We probably have time for one
You
more.
want one more? Yeah, okay, so let's check this. So C. Waddle asked about what would you look at for financial when you were talking about your prioritization framework?
Yeah, so again, you can define your matrix in terms of impact, but for financial there for me was ROI. Margins, ROI, profitability. So again, an example would be if I had plotted an initiative that 12 customers have asked for, that's going to have a high financial impact and a high ROI. Whereas if I have a initiative, right, that is simply for internal tech debt, that will likely have a low financial impact. Or low.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Maria, and thank you all for joining us today. This was fantastic, amazing conversation and so engaging. So I will just want to share one last slide. I know that we are on time, but I will share your screen. So someone was asking if DragonBoat can do some of the spreadsheets that you mentioned before. So if you are ready to see DragonBoat in action, join the next group demo on Feb 29. You can scan this QR code to save your spot. And if you are not on your Slack yet, please join us up on board and keep the conversation ongoing there. So I think that's all for now. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. This was really helpful. And I hope to see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye. See you next time.